939, 939. Be the hymn of the church.
Okay, I'm going to start out by saying I think most people here know that I had a seizure last year. So if I pass out in the floor, it may be because of the seizure.
Well, wait, let me lay that up there for you.
All right, tonight I'm going to talk about, the heading is the power of one. And I think this is a good heading based upon what we've talked about in the last few weeks about our numbers. This is basically what one person can do. All right. Can one person make a difference? In 1771, just one vote gave America the English language instead of German. In 1845, just one vote brought Texas into the Union. In 1868, just one vote saved President Andrew Johnson from impeachment. In 1876, just one vote made Rutherford B. Hayes President of the United States. In 1923, just one vote gave Adolf Hitler leadership of the Nazi Party. In 1941, just one vote saved selective service just weeks before Pearl Harbor. If one person can make a difference in election results, what difference can one person make in their community, their home, their school, their work, and their world? I came across some quotes. Here are a few of them that I like. If you think you're too small to make a difference, you have never been in bed with a mosquito. Sometimes maybe you just need to smile. You can't get through a single day without having an impact on someone, whether either good or bad. Somebody is sitting in the shade because somebody else planted a tree a long time ago. Many of us will have to pass through the valley of the shadow of death again and again before we reach the mountaintop. Here's a good question for you. What difference are you making? I'm not talking about what you do for your company. I'm not talking about saving for your retirement. I'm talking about what difference are you making in this life that will go on and on and on somewhere for eternity. Every person has the power to make others happy. Some do it simply by entering the room. Others do it by leaving the room. Some people leave trails of heartache. Others leave trails of joy. Some leave trails of bitterness. Others leave trails of harmony. Some leave trails of pessimism. Others leave trails of optimism. Some leave trails of criticism. Others leave trails of gratitude. What kind of trail are you leaving? You leave trails where you work, where you shop, where you bank, where you get your car fixed, where you go out to eat and they know you on a first-name basis and they even know what you order. It's your doctor, the garbage collector, your co-workers. Are you influencing any of them? Start singing. Maybe that'll make a difference. Paul did, and he was in prison. Here's another question for you. How many here obeyed the gospel because somebody had the courage to come talk to you about it? We wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for a man named Noah that decided to live faithfully for God. Talk about impacting the future. Let's talk about excuses for just a minute. People say I can't make a difference because of my age. Well, let me know the secret. There's no restrictions for making an impact because of your age. In John chapter 6, he was feeding the 5,000 and gets a little boy to help him. Noah was 600 years old when it began to rain. 600 years old, I don't think, is spring chicken. Don't use age as an excuse that God can't use you. People say their ability hinders them. I'm talking hard to myself on this one. Exodus chapter 4. Moses says, I'm not very eloquent. God said, I didn't call you to be eloquent. I called you to be obedient. Just the phrase, I can't, is the response from someone with a very little God. So how big is your God? People say I can't do it because of my appearance. If that's the case, I'm in big trouble. A story is told about a man that went to the Tewksbury Institute. He met a maid that worked there that was getting up in years. He asked her if she could tell him how long she had worked there, and she replied, "I have worked here as long as it's been open." He asked if she could tell him the history about the place. She said, "No, but I can show you something even better." She took his hand and led him down to the basement. Under the oldest section of the building, she pointed to what looked like small prison cells. "This is where they used to keep Annie." She asked, "Who is Annie?" Annie was a girl that no one could do anything with. She would bite and scream and spit on everybody. They would have to put her food on the end of a stick because they didn't want to get close to her. She said, "I was only a few years younger than her, and I would think I sure would hate to be locked in a cage like that. I tried to think about what I could do to help. So I just went home and baked some brownies. The next day I brought them to her and very carefully set them down to the edge of her cage. I said, 'Annie, I baked these brownies for you and you can come and get them when you want.' I did this every day. After each day, she seemed a little bit nicer. Sometimes I would just sit down and talk with her, and one time I even got her laughing. The nurses started noticing this and asked me, could I help them out? So every time the nurses wanted to examine Annie, they would always send me in first to calm her down. After they were able to work with her for a while, they realized that Annie was blind. It wasn't long after that that the Perkins Institute opened their doors. They were able to help her, and she began to study and eventually became a teacher herself. Annie came back later to the Institute to visit. The director of the Institute asked Annie if she was willing to try to help them out with a patient. The director said, "We have a patient here that is almost like an animal, and she is blind and deaf, and we don't know what to do." Annie started working with that lady, and that's how Annie Sullivan got to know a little girl named Helen Keller. Helen Keller was the first person to be deaf and blind and to earn a college degree. She was also nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Helen Keller was once asked who had the greatest impact on her life, and she replied, that was Annie Sullivan. And Annie stopped her and said, "That's not right." Annie told her that the one who had the greatest impact on their lives was a little old maid who took the time to make a difference. Helen Keller was quoted as saying, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." It isn't a song until it's been sung. It isn't a bell until it's been rung. And it isn't love until it's been given away. Does those people that you say very little to know that you love them? Why are you keeping it from them? Authentic love can't remain a secret. God proved his love that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. How about this week? Don't hold on to it. Give it away to somebody. Jesus Christ came to this earth on his own free will, without whining, murmuring, or complaining, or saying, "I'm too busy right now." We would all be destined for hell if Jesus decided not to care. I'm so glad that he cared for me. The Bible is full of single individuals that made a huge difference in people's lives. Don't tell me that one person can't make a difference. So I need to ask you a question. What difference are you making? If you have come to the conclusion that you need to obey the New Testament plan of salvation, there are people here willing to help. Or if you just need someone to talk to, that's what we're here for. What are you waiting for? Come forward as we stand and sing.
Oh, do not let the world